Welcome back to Mr. DuPage's classroom. This lesson is for my Algebra 1 class. This is 10.3, Solving Quadratics. Standard form or a quadratic equation is the same thing. It is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now that we're going to solve, we always want it equal to 0. Solutions is where the graph crosses the x-axis and the solutions will satisfy the equation. There are three other names for solutions. The first one is roots. That comes from when we take the square root of x in order to get our answer. Then there's x-intercepts. That's because that's where it crosses the x-axis, and it is also zeros because it is set to 0. So it says that we solve for our x when our y is 0. If I ask you to solve an equation, what is the first thing you should think of? Well, let's see what happens here. If I want to solve 2x plus 3 equals 15, I'm going to subtract 3, get 2x equal to 12, divide by 2, which means that my x would equal 6. So what would you solve? What is your goal? The goal is to get the x by itself. So what we're going to, self. So what we're going to do is the opposite operation of what is happening near x. So since it was adding 3, I need to subtract 3 to get it away from x. Since it was multiplying the 2, I need to divide by the 2 to get it away from the x. All right? So if you think along those lines, let's see how we could solve an equation using square roots. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I have a negative away from my x squared, so I need to go ahead and add that 98. So to be 2x squared is equal to 98. Then I would divide my 2 to get the 2 away from the x. So I'm left with x squared equals 98 divided by 2 is 49. If I take the square root of x squared, if you use your calculator to do that, it's only going to give you one answer. The problem is the truth is positive and negative 7 if multiplied by themselves will get me to 49. So really there's two answers. So my answer would be x equals plus or minus 7. For part B, I need to get everything away from the x. So I need to get the x squared by itself first. So I'm going to add 25. So x squared equals 25. Then I will take the square root. And again, I'm going to end up with two answers, plus and minus 5. Okay. Part C here, again, I need to use the opposite operation. So since it's plus 12, I'll subtract 12. That would give me 3x squared is equal to 0. I'm going to divide by 3. That would give me x squared is equal to 0. Take the square root. 0 is not a positive or negative number, so in this case, I'm only going to get one answer, and that would be 0. Okay? On to part D. I have 2x squared plus 32 equals 0, so I need to subtract my 32. 2x squared is equal to negative 32, so I want to divide by my 2. X squared is equal to negative 16. If I take the square root of that, if you go ahead and try to type that in your calculator, what's going to happen is it's going to come up with an error because I can never take the square root of an already negative number. There is no way to take two numbers, whether they be positive or negative, and multiply them by themselves to get me to negative 16. As an example, you don't need to write this down. I'm going to write it in red so you don't necessarily do it. If I take negative 4 times negative 4, I'm going to end up with positive 16 still. Okay? So there is no real solution every time that I try to take the square root of a negative number. Anytime you try to take the square root of a negative number, your answer is really no real solution. Part E, I can go ahead and divide both sides by 5. I end up with x squared is equal to 5. Now I need to take the square root So x would equal plus or minus. Every single time you square root a positive number, make sure you have plus or minus the square root of 5. If you try to type in the square root of 5 in your calculator, it's going to come up with a decimal. That's kind of like the same idea as what we said about mixed fractions and using decimals for our answers beforehand. I don't like them, so go ahead and just leave it as the square root of 5. That will come back into play when you get to Algebra 2, so you might as well get into practice of it now. So your answer would just be plus or minus the square root of 5. Now for part F, I need to add 10 to both sides. So x squared is equal to negative 10. Take the square root. So there is, again, trying to take the square root of a negative number. So no real solution. All right, this table at the bottom, all this is really going to do is talk to us about when do we get two solutions, when do we get one solution, when do we get no solutions. So solving by square root. We'll get two solutions when my x squared is equal to what? Well, let's look back up at the problems we just did. I got two solutions in A, two solutions in B, and two solutions in E. What is x squared equal to? Well, x squared was equal to 49, which was positive. X squared was equal to 25, which was positive. And x squared was equal to 5, which was positive. So I will get two solutions when x squared is equal to a positive number. When will I get one solution? There was only one problem where I only got one solution, and that was part C. It's when x squared was equal to 0. So I only get one solution when x squared is equal to 0. When will I get no solutions? That's part D. And part F, that's when x squared was equal to a negative number in both problems. So x squared is equal to a negative number. That is the end of our lesson. The most important thing to remember here is when I'm trying to solve for x, I need to get everything away from it. I'm going to start with addition or subtraction, use the opposite operation. So if I'm adding to my x squared, I'm going to go ahead and subtract. Then I'm going to get rid of my multiplication or division. So if I'm multiplying by my x squared, I'm going to go ahead and divide. And then I can go ahead and take my square root if I have an x squared. The other thing you need to remember is that summary at the bottom, the table. I'll get two solutions when x squared is equal to a positive number. I'll get one solution when x squared is equal to 0. And I'll get no solutions when x squared is equal to a negative number. That is the end of our lesson. If you have any questions over this material, please make sure you come in and see me. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching the video, and have a great day.